It's really good to be back here doing this again. It was really fun last time I was here with, not here, but at the Music Box with Odenkirk. It was fun, yeah. This is going to be a little bit different because I knew Odenkirk, and I've known him longer, but I think I know Molly a little bit more intimately than Odenkirk. I've known Molly when she first came to work on SNL, and the things I have a lot of thoughts, and some of the stuff will come out tonight. But she used to make me laugh at read-through tables. And I would laugh at normal stuff that people would do. But with Molly, she would do stuff that didn't necessarily get a big laugh around the table, which caused me to laugh really hard. And then she would look over me and sometimes even comment, "Tim is laughing," during the read-through. I have a lot of fun memories and things we've done over the years in knowing her. One time we were in New York, and it was like a Wednesday or Thursday, and I was like, I told her I was going to go get a pedicure. And so she came with me, and we both got mani-pedis together, and it was really beautiful. I've never done that with a woman that I was not sleeping with, so. Another favorite memory, we shot this commercial for SNL, and I haven't seen it in a long time. It was ahead of its time, definitely. But it was written by Al Franken, and it was, I don't know, Molly, you remember this. It was a commercial for toothpaste. And the joke of the commercial was that Molly and I were a married couple, and the whole commercial was just about how much in love we were and that we just kissed a lot in the commercial. And so Al thought it was funny because you never mentioned in the commercial that they're an interracial couple and they're tongue kissing. And so I got to kiss Molly for like a whole day, and it was really, really good. We may even recreate it tonight, I'm not sure. Who knows? She's her and Will and Chris Parnell, I made them break during the sketch one time, which we're going to talk about tonight because I want to get her perspective on it. The other thing I wanted to say is I flew in because I live here, as you may or may not know. But yeah, one of the things I really love about Chicago is the quality of weed that we have here in Chicago. But listen, I flew in and didn't have time to like go and get my supply of weed. So, if you look, it's all legal, so we don't have to hide it, right? But if you want to ask a question or something and you just happen to mention to me that I dropped something and you might have something you want to give me that you think I dropped, it could be from your personal stash, I don't care. But yes, I will take any joint, weed, edible products that you have. Okay, let's get started with the show. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the stage the one and only Molly Shannon. Look at that.
Thank you.
Hi, Molly. You're welcome. I didn't go too long, did I?
No.
Okay, good.
Thank you so much.
All right. First thing I was worried about, Molly, was your skirt and your dress on the stage. Are we okay?
What'd you say?
I was worried that it might be too short. I was worried when you sat
I should
down.
have worn pants. Can you hear me okay? Okay, great.
All right, great. Well, welcome to Chicago, Molly.
Thank you. I love Chicago.
Do you know we have good weed here? I don't know if you know that.
Do you? That's funny. I'm not a weed. Yeah.
So you're out of weed too?
I'm not a pot smoker at all. No.
Oh no, I didn't. We never got high together, so no, it's true.
It doesn't mix with my system.
What is your? What would you say is your go-to thing?
I just love, I get very excited to wake up and have coffee. Yeah, coffee, yeah.
That's pretty boring, actually.
Yeah.
So I read your book, and it is really, really good. This is the book. It's called Hello, Molly.
Thank you.
And of course, the first thing I did when I got the book was look to see where I was mentioned. I do that all the time, but and you didn't mention me at all. No, I'm kidding. You do.
Yeah.
First of all, I want to ask you, what was it like writing the book? I've never done it.
Yeah.
I know a lot of people who have done it. And do you find this easier being a memoir as opposed to writing some sketch or fake story?
I think I found it really hard, but I do have to say I like the kind of quiet of a book. Like it's so different than performing. But I think it's so hard. God, anybody who writes a book, I have so much respect for them because I found it really hard. And I think you really can't know till you start doing it. And so it was hard. And yeah.
So it was hard.
Yeah, hard.
Keyword hard.
Hard, yeah.
What? And I love her, so I can say this kind of stuff to her. You won't be offended, don't worry. But yes, so what was the process though? Like, did you like go through diaries? Did you go through pictures, calendars? Did you like to help you bring back memories of things that you remembered? Or
Yeah.
we'll get to that. We're gonna start at the beginning.
That's so funny. I did. Well, my dad wrote a lot, so I went through, after he died, I saved a lot of his writing, and I wanted to incorporate that into the book. And yeah, I had always written about funny expressions my dad would say, like, oh, she just has a parlor room talent. So I always in the back of my head was like, I want to write something about my dad. He was such a big figure in my life. So I would always write stories about him and just keep the notes just for myself. So I had to go dig some of those back up. But yeah.
And so, you know, I want to stay with the process of writing it still. And so, what would a day like when you knew, okay, I'm working on this book? Mm-hmm. What would a normal day be like for you when you know, get up? We know you have coffee.
Yeah.
What happens after that?
Then I guess, well, I collaborated with Sean Wilsey, who wrote this great memoir called Oh, the Glory of It All. So we would talk on the phone and just work on stories together and kind of go back and forth and just kind of like that. But I have to say, like, the accident chapter was very hard to write. When that was over, I was like, I felt like I could take a deep breath and then just go have fun.
Right.
And yeah, and SNL chapters were hard too. I feel like that's hard too. Because
Right.
I do want, I feel like that's hard to write about.
Why do you feel it's hard? Because you don't want to.
I feel like so much has been written about it already. So I
Right.
was just like, how should I write this? You know, yeah.
Right. I mean, I feel that way too. Like when I was reading your book and Odenkirk's book.
Yeah.
Like I felt like because my people around me have also said, you know, you should tell your story, you know, whatever.
Yeah.
But I just felt like my perspective is sort of different from their perspectives, and so when I would read your books, I would go like not that it was not how I saw it, but that I just had a different viewpoint of the way it all turned out. And I'll bring up an instance. For instance, was the Rolling Stone cover magazine.
Yeah.
Well, what happened was the cast. We had a great year. And the cast was put on the cover of the Rolling Stone, but it wasn't the whole cast.
Yeah.
It was, I'm looking at you now.
Yeah. Like, okay.
It was Molly, Sherry, Will, Chris Kattan.
Yeah.
And maybe Norm. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And so the rest of the cast wasn't in it, and we didn't even know about it.
Yeah.
And so from their perspective, it was a great week.
Mm-hmm. I'm sorry.
But from our perspective, we were really bummed about it, and it was hard to be happy for our friends because it felt like the cast sort of got separated of like, these are the important people and everybody else is like, you know, utility players or something. Even though that's not the way it was, though. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so that aspect of it, when I read that, I was just like, oh yeah, it wasn't, my story wouldn't be, oh, what a great week that was for everybody.
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
But let's talk about the Rolling Stone thing just for a second. How did you feel about that?
Oh, that was really fun. Well, that was very exciting for me. Because
Tell me more.
I was just very special, and so I was the one picked. No, just kidding. Well, that's so funny because I didn't know that, but that shouldn't have happened that way, and I don't know how that happened. But no, it was really fun. It was like Mark Seliger was the photographer, and Come on. No, but let's not talk about that.
No, I do. Well, here's the other thing that I will say about that, and then we'll go back. Don't worry. But is that I have recently picked that magazine up after our friend Norm Macdonald passed away. And I was reading through it. Yeah, Norm Macdonald.
So great, yeah.
And I remember when that came out, and I was upset about it and everything, and I had told my ex, who was my wife at the time, and then she said, "Did you read it?" And I was like, "No, I haven't read it. I don't want to fucking read it." But then I did read it, and then Norm said really nice things about me in that article.
Yeah.
And when I picked it up recently, I saw it, and I just started bawling because I was like, he called me the funniest person on the show.
That's amazing.
Which was really, really sweet because I was. You know. So let's talk about Shaker Heights.
Sure.
Ohio.
Yeah.
Yay.
Hey.
I'm just going to run and jump to a bunch of different topics because
yeah.
the book is still fresh in my head.
Okay, great.
And I don't want to do everything in order, but I do want to go back to the Rolling Stone article.
Okay. Great.
So tell me about the things that you first got you interested in doing comedy and things that like turned you on as far as what you found funny.
I think I wasn't so much such a comedy person really, but I always wanted to put shows on in my backyard. And Anne Rampt, who was my good friend, we would just we would always doing characters. We would just mimic people from the neighborhood, like just do their voices. Like we would imitate her grandmother and just this other guy named Mr. Rossi, and just we would constantly do voices and characters, but it wasn't for anybody else. It was just between the two of us.
Right.
And then we would do it so much, we'd be like, okay, we got to stop doing this. We got to stop. Like we couldn't stop.
We might be nuts. We might be crazy.
Yeah, and we liked going to different worlds. Like her grandmother was from Southern Ohio, and she was very conservative, and she'd be like, all right, girls, go wash yourselves up and, take a bath, and she was always making blueberry pie, so we would imitate her, and we just liked being in different worlds, and we would sometimes go take the bus and just go hang out at hospitals and eat in the hospital cafeteria to watch the doctors in their scrubs, and I was like, that's so interesting, that doctor probably just did surgery, and he's having a tuna sandwich, and I was like, I'm gonna get soup, and I just like being in different worlds with characters, you know what I mean?
As a child, you did this.
Yeah, as a child, yeah. And then we would...
She was a kid, guys.
Yeah, as a child, yes. But I still like that kind of stuff. Like I like going into different worlds. And Anne Rampt was the first person who, she's actually kind of shy. She was the first person who told me, she was like, we saw a Robert Altman movie with Karen Black, and she was singing the song Sincerely, and we loved that movie because we thought the performances were so great. And Anne told me, she was like, I could picture you doing that, like being in the movies, like that. And I was like, you could? So it was like Tom Sawyer and Huckleberry Finn, like two friends. And so she was the first person who told me she could picture me in the movies.
Yeah.
And that made me feel so good, and it gave me such confidence. And then she wanted to be a country singer, so she would go, could I practice my singing for you? And I was like, sure. So she would sing for me in my living room, but she would be like, I don't want you to look at me, because she was really shy. Isn't that so sweet? So she would just get up and like sing with her back to me, like really shy, like on the road again. And then I couldn't look at her. I was like, that's so good. Yeah. So we were like, very, very close.
It's nice to have somebody that young supportive of you and like indulging your, creativity, for lack of a better word,
Exactly. And it's funny because she's not a performer. She's actually shy, but she is the best mimic. Like when she tells a story, she can imitate, like her aunt. I mean, she's so funny. Yeah. She's just like a naturally, and I think when you're connected like that from your childhood, it doesn't matter how much time passes, you can always pick up again. And, you know, our lives have gone in different directions. She lives in Cleveland, she has 5 kids, but we're still really close, like sisters. So
and when you get together now, do you still find yourself pretending and going into different worlds and stuff?
That's so funny. I don't get to see her as much because I'm not in Cleveland that much, but no, not so
not
much.
really.
Yeah,
oh, okay.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Well, you've grown up now, so you do it professionally. Why do it for fun? You know what I'm saying?
Exactly. Exactly.
No, I would say from my perspective too, it was the same thing of having, my family, my brothers and sisters were all very supportive, and like when I was younger, we used to like, you know, I did impressions of like Michael Jackson or whatever, and we would tape it,
Yeah.
and I discovered later that like coming up in that, having that upbringing, I was already prepared for improv and comedy because I had already been working that muscle as a child, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so what point for you did you feel like, and I know it's in the book, but that you're like, okay, I'm gonna go for this thing. Was it when you went to NYU? No, it was when you were doing theater. You were doing theater as a kid, right?
Yeah, I was doing theater as a kid. I just thought of one more story too. My dad Jim Shannon would have loved to have been an actor or a writer, but he just didn't have the confidence. But he would always say, I wish I would have gone to the Cleveland Playhouse. But I call it the Jim Shannon School of Acting. When I was little, we would do scenes where he would make us answer a fake phone call, and we had to do it very realistically. And if it wasn't, he was like, cut, stop, you know? So we'd be like, Shannon residence, is Molly speaking? Yeah, you know, and so we'd have to do it so real, so then when friends were over, we would trick them. So we would fake call and then say you were my friend at my house, and I'd be like, Shannon residence, is Molly speaking, how can I help you? You know, or Shannon residence, is Molly speaking. Yeah, Tim's right here. Watch, we'd be like, yeah, and I'm like trying to pull you in with my very real acting. Okay. Yeah, and then the person, we'd draw them in, and we could always trick our friends. So
Yeah.
I really do credit that with this natural acting style that I try to do,
Yeah.
that I learned from my dad.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
No, it's so fun. And so you've got the bug. You did some theater as a kid, and like, you know what? I don't know, Broadway shows type shows, right?
I think it was just, I grew up, I think my dad loved Judy Garland, and I grew up watching movies like Easter Parade, and my dad would clean the house, and he would take Dexamil because he was raising 2 little girls by himself. So when he got behind the cleaning, he would take a Dexamil and just be up all night cleaning. And then when the house was sparkling clean, he would play Judy Garland. So we just grew up with Judy Garland, and you know, he liked these performers, so I was like, I want to be like them, you know, like that kind of thing.
Right.
Yeah, but once my dad was cleaning, and my sister came in my room the next morning, and she was like, Daddy's still downstairs cleaning, and the sun was rising, and we went down the basement, and he was like smoking, and, you know, folding clothes, and yeah, it was crazy.
Oh man.
Yeah.
It's like you know, I mean, it's funny, you know, and everything, but like the same thing was that with Odenkirk, that when we did the Q&A with him, that I brought up, and it's the same with a lot of comedians or comic actors or performers, is that your childhood, you're like, there's trauma or a relationship that's missing or not complete.
Yeah.
And you find, and this is from me reading your book and reading Odenkirk's book too, is that whether you know it or not, or admit it or not, you are sort of doing a lot of it for other reasons. Like some of it is because you want to entertain your father, or you want to make a dream for them come true, or I don't want to say what Odenkirk's saying, but like he didn't have a great relationship with his dad, so he tried to become a better father, you know, when he had kids. So Molly, how do you take your early life and keep going?
Yeah.
I love you, you know that.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
That's so sweet. Well, so I write about our car accident.
Yes.
In the
and I don't want to, you know, people know or not.
that's okay.
I don't know if
You can
people
say,
know the story in the book or how much you want to share.
No, you can share, yeah.
Well, Molly's mom and sister and a cousin died in an automobile accident when Molly was very young. And so she was raised by her dad, and her sister, her and her sister was raised by her dad, single dad. I closed the book and I got teared up
You did.
during that story, and in the very end, talking about your dad, because I met your dad in New York, and he was so sweet,
Yes,
so sweet to me too.
So sweet.
But how, you know, how do you keep going? I guess is not the question, but to go into comedy and to still, how do you do that? You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, I think it's interesting because that was so painful and so sad, but I think it also gave me like a drive in show business, and I was like driven to like achieve, and you know, I was able, because of that, to also have a certain bounceability with all the rejection in Hollywood, because I was like, oh, well, it's never gonna be as bad as that when I was little. But I remember when I was on SNL, I felt like at the peak of my success there, I felt people compliment me like about Mary Katherine, whenever, like, oh my God, I love that. And I was like, oh, thank you. But then I would turn the compliment dark, like I would find something wrong. And then I'd walk away like I couldn't. And I realized, oh, I've been driven to kind of work and achieve. And I thought if you got to that point and you were doing backflips and making people laugh and falling into chairs, that it would, I think I thought that I realized the only person I really wanted was my mom to tell me I was good. And when I realized that wasn't going to bring her back, it was like, I got really sad for a while. I was finally in my 30s at SNL, and I could finally feel really sad, like it's not going to bring her back. But, so I think some actors have that in common, like this kind of thing where they feel like they're not enough, or I think losing a parent at a very young age, you feel like defective. So I felt like, why, I was so little, so I was like, why did she leave without me? There must be something wrong with me, or she must have left because I'm bad. That's how you make sense of it. And I'm like, it felt, so then I wouldn't get too close to school teachers because I would be afraid that I would disappoint them. I mean, it really has a dramatic effect on your life. And even as far as performing goes, I wouldn't really want friends to come to Saturday Night Live because I would feel like I'm going to disappoint them. I still have that feeling. Like I get afraid of, like it's easier if it's strangers, but if it's somebody I know, I have a fear that they're going to be disappointed.
Right.
Isn't that interesting?
Yeah, it is, because it doesn't matter. Really. You know. I mean, you can't control if somebody's going to be disappointed or, you know. And that was like a thing with Chris Farley, was like everybody he met, he wanted them to love him and he wanted to make them laugh. It's like you can't live like that. You know what I mean?
It's exhausting.
Yeah.
But I was going to say, like, you know, Saturday Night Live, Tim and I know this is such a roller coaster. You know, sometimes you're in the show, sometimes you're not. And, you know, people don't know how hard it is. You're vying for a spot on the show with 17 other people. And, you know, sometimes you maybe invite some friends to the show, and then, but you're not in the show because you don't know if your stuff gets cut. And then you have to go to the party after, and it was so fun. You'd have like limousines take you to a party. But then sometimes when I did invite someone, they'd be in the car like, more Molly, there wasn't enough of you. And I feel so bad. Didn't you have that, Tim?
Yeah, I used to hate that. Because it's like, well, why don't you come and write some sketches for me? You want to be on the show so badly. You started writing letters to the network or something. Let's talk about, I want to say a quick thing. I'm reading the book too. I was really amazed at how hard you worked when you were in LA at packing the shows for the Mary Katherine Gallagher character and the one person show that you did. Because that's something I think young people in show business really need to hear, those kind of stories. Is that, why don't you tell them about what you would do? Yeah, so my friend Rob Muir and I, we met, I had gone to NYU drama school and that went great, and I developed Mary Katherine Gallagher in a comedy show at NYU, and then people were like, you should be on Saturday Night Live, but I consider myself a dramatic actress. And then my friend Eugene Pack and I were like, we're gonna drive out to LA because we want to try to get on television. And then I took an improv class in Santa Monica, connected to Second City, but I'm not a Second City person or anything. Oh, gross. But they had a theater there for a while in Santa Monica, so I did that for a little bit. I met my comedy partner Rob Muir, and then we created the show called The Rob and Molly Show, and basically we just would meet in my living room and start rehearsing. And it was originally called The Lumber Company. It was just some people that we met in class, and we would just make up little scenes, and then
I got kind of singled out in these reviews at the shows in Hollywood, and then Rob was like, why don't just the two of us do a show? And he was more a writer, so he kind of let me take center stage. And we made, because I was kind of having a tough time getting parts from casting directors, and I thought, I gotta write my own show so I can show them what I do.
Right.
And so we worked really hard on the show, and we made it like a tight 55-minute show, and we made it, you know, at convenient time, so that agents coming from work from Beverly Hills could come to the show, and it was like 55 minutes, and we served wine, and I was a waitress at the time, so I also hired this band, and I would, to make it fun, I paid for the band with my waitressing money, and if people couldn't afford to buy tickets, I would pay for their tickets because I was really into creative visualization, and I felt like the money will come back to me someday.
Right.
And
She would invite homeless people to her shows and stuff too.
Yes, I would. Like if
Molly told me to come to the show.
We did. And so I think that was. What was your question?
Well, just how hard you worked.
Sorry, I got lost.
How hard you worked to like pack those houses. You got the word out there.
Yeah, so we would. My rule was if we could just have one business person per show, that would be great. And so I would use when I worked in restaurants, I would invite all my customers, like, you gotta come see my show, you gotta come see my show. What's your name? Monica? Okay, Monica, what's your boyfriend's name? Ben? Oh, he's a lawyer? Uh-huh. And I would take notes. And then when I did a show, even if we just had like one casting director coming or one, you know, anybody, I had a box of names and phone numbers of people that I met in the restaurant, and I would cold call them like, hi Monica, it's Molly. Yeah, remember I told you I have a show? Yes, well, we're doing one this Thursday night at 8 o'clock. Can you come? Great, good. And I would, you know, call each person, and so that if that one business person came, it looked like this hot show, even though, you know.
Yeah.
And I do have to say that really worked, because eventually that show got me an audition for Saturday Night Live. Right. And I remember when I got the show, finally, when I found out I got the show, I took that box of names and phone numbers and I threw it in the dumpster. I was like, I don't have to call anybody anymore. And I couldn't believe that people would show up and the band was paid for, and, you know,
That's
like that.
so great.
Yeah.
Okay, well, when I was getting ready, we're going to talk about some SNL some more. Is that all right with you guys? Yeah.
Sure, yeah. Okay, good.
When I was telling people that we know I was doing this, a lot of people told me to say hello. Ian Macdonald Graham said hello. Steve Korn, of course.
Oh, yeah.
Harper Steele,
Great.
also. And so let's talk about, do you want to talk, let's talk about Sally O'Malley.
Sure. So sweet. You guys, okay, great.
And when I was talking before about laughing at you during read-through, you know what I'm talking about, right?
No, what would happen?
Well, you would do sketches and stuff, and then if nobody, I would laugh because I'm an easy laugh, but you made me laugh.
Yeah.
And if nobody laughed and I laughed, you would go, Tim laughed.
I would.
You would say it verbally, like, and I was always like, why is she calling so much attention to me laughing at her jokes? But Dog Show was the one that really would get me.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
That's great.
Dog Show would get me all the time. So all those people said hello.
Okay, great.
All of the SNL stories in the book, you guys can read it or whatever. Is there anything you want to talk about with SNL? There's things I want to ask you about.
Well, Sally O'Malley, that's kind of interesting because that character I did in my stage show, and my dad was such a big presence in my childhood that a lot of my characters are versions of my father, but as women. Isn't that interesting?
I know. That's what I'm saying. Like the overall theme of the book, psychologically, and I'm not a psychologist, but is how heavily influenced your career is by your dad.
By my dad, yeah. So like I'll take my shoes off because it's.
Yay! Finally.
Yeah, but I should have worn pants because I can't kick. But I'll try a little. But so my dad, after the accident, had a brace on his leg, and so let's see. So Sally O'Malley, but Sally O'Malley is also a combination of my dad and then a woman from our neighborhood who had jet black hair and wore red lipstick. And then also when I was in grade school, we had these two sister choreographers. At St. Dominic's, we would do a St. Patrick's Day show, and we had two sister choreographers who would come and teach us our dance, named Patty and Jackie, and they were like 5, 6, 7, 8, and they had red spandex pants and black hair, and I was like, yes, I live for St. Patrick's Day. So that's a little Sally O'Malley. But basically, the character, so my dad, you know, after the accident, his legs were badly damaged. He had to learn to walk again for like a year. And so I was always like, I had to be very careful. I couldn't jump on him because I could hurt his legs. And so and he would walk slowly, and I was like, oh, I wish he could walk faster. So a lot of my characters are kicking or they're breaking out. So Sally O'Malley, the limp, the way I started is actually me imitating my dad. Mm-hmm. So the character comes on. The character comes on. I can't kick further because I have a skirt, but the character comes on. It's like, you know, limping, ladies and gentlemen, you know, like this. That's my dad. How my dad walks in real life, but nobody knows that. Isn't that weird?
Yeah, it's
funny.
funny.
Me imitating my dad, ladies and gentlemen, and she seems weak, or she seems like she's not going to be able to move. My name is Sally O'Malley. Proud to say I'm 50 years old. I'm not one of those gals who's afraid to tell her real age. And you think she's not going to have it, but then, surprise, she has power. And what it is me wishing my dad to kick the braces off his legs. Like you may think I'm not strong, but I'm a motherfucker, and I can kick.
Stretch.
Thank you. So thank you, that's so sweet.
Oh, that's so funny.
I should have worn pants. So I could. You know what?
I know. The thing, when I would watch you, when I would watch you rehearse or do camera blocking, I would always turn to the right of somebody and go, she can kick, she can stretch, and she can kick.
But you know what's so funny too? I never get sick of it. I could do it every day, all the time. Like people will ask me, oh, can you do that for my birthday? Could you do that? And I'll go right away. I make a little video just in my summer shorts, and I'll do it in my backyard. And I made it fun to say. I like doing things that were fun to say. Like it feels good for your body or something, you know what I mean?
Yeah. That's so great. Here, I want to ask you, we're going to move to the audience questions in a second. I have one question, because I want to get it from your perspective.
Okay.
We did a sketch. It was me, you, Will, Chris Parnell.
Yeah.
And the doctor sketch was called. You guys know the sketch?
That sketch, Dr. Poop?
Well, they call it Dr. Poop now, but it was not originally Dr. Poop.
Oh, okay, great, yeah.
But here's what happened. Will is doing this sketch. He's a doctor telling Molly and Chris Parnell that their baby that they just had, and also Molly doesn't even look like she just had a baby in the sketch. But the baby is missing. They don't know where the baby is.
Yeah.
And so Will is also on the phone talking about buying a Palomino, a new horse. And he's ignoring Molly and Chris. And then he said he doesn't know where the baby is, but so he calls in a specialist, who's me, Dr. Poop.
Yeah.
Now here's what do you remember about how that happened?
About how that sketch happened?
Well, no, I'll tell my perspective.
Okay.
It was between Dress and Air. Freddie Prinz Jr. was the host.
Yeah.
Remember?
Yeah.
And so he couldn't get from one sketch to do the doctor sketch.
Yeah.
During the meeting in between, Lauren said to Adam McKay, who wrote the sketch, what are we going to do about Freddie Prinz? And Adam goes, we'll figure it out. We'll get somebody to do it, or he'll make it, or whatever. And then Lauren was like, okay, we'll make it work. And so literally 5 minutes before the sketch happens, Adam McKay comes to me and goes, enter this scene and just read whatever's on the cards. Yeah. And so I was like, okay, yeah, let's do it. And so I just did it. I went in and said, hi, I'm Dr. Poop. I don't know what happened to your baby, but I can do the robot. And I started doing the robot. And then I say, that'll be $5,000. And then I leave. I turn around and look under the monitor, and Will is crying. Molly and Chris Parnell never broke.
Chris, but I did.
You broke hard,
oh my
yeah.
God.
What was your perspective of it?
Well, because we were so surprised and you were so funny. We could not stop laughing. Oh my God. But it was like surprising.
Yeah.
But wasn't that sketch was written by Adam McKay, right?
Yeah.
So I think it was based on his experience going through IVF.
Yes, it was,
yeah,
but it was
or
also a
something.
combination of a director on the show who you would talk to him about your sketches or something, but he would take a phone call while you were talking to him, and he'd be like, yeah, hold on. Yeah, well, can you put 2 pleats in the pants? Okay, well, hem them about a 42. Be like, dude, I'm talking about my sketch that's so important to me.
Yeah.
And so that was the guy on the phone talking about the horses.
Oh, that's so funny.
But it is one of it's one of the things I'm asked about constantly.
That is great.
And the thing I loved about it was that we were these young actors or whatever on this multi-million-dollar show, and Adam McKay goes, just go in there and read whatever's on the card.
Yeah.
Okay, here's from the audience questions that we're going to get out of here soon. This is from Zander. What? Yes.
Oh, yeah, you can ask
Did I say
anything.
your name wrong or what? All right, fuck you then.
That's good.
Your name sounds like you should be battling Superman or something. Anyways, here's the question from Zander. You were so great in Year of the Dog. How did you end up getting cast?
Oh, You're the Dog. Well, Mike White and he's a good friend of mine. He's actually in Sicily shooting season 2 of The White Lotus.
Oh, great.
Yeah, I know. So great. So Mike and I did a TV show together that never really made it to the air called Cracking Up, where I played a pill-addicted mom who was like a therapist, moved into our house, and I don't know. But anyhow, the show was very hard on Mike, and he has spoken openly about it in the press. I think he almost had a nervous breakdown. But he felt bad about that, and I was like, don't worry, it's too stressful, because the network was wanting him to change it. So basically, he was like, I'm going to write you a movie someday. And I said, okay, great, that would be wonderful. So then one day, he just handed me Year of the Dog, and I couldn't believe it, and it was more dramatic. So I really credit Mike with kind of showing people that I could do drama too, because he knew me really well, so I think he thought that I could do it. But it did change things for me, where
That's
I got
great.
at more dramatic parts, yeah.
Good. And I'll say again, here's another thing I remember that when you did Superstar, and then Lauren said, yeah, Superstar.
Yeah, oh, thank you. That's so sweet, thank you.
Okay, and let's see how this goes.
Thank you.
And then right after that, I did Ladies Man.
Yeah!
But we were talking, and I asked you. I said, "What advice could you give me?" And you told me, "Just focus on what you have at hand for the day."
That's what I said?
Yep, that's what you said.
What you mean as far as...
Don't worry about any of the right people will come to you about sketches on SNL. People will come to you with other projects they want you to do. They will be having notes for you about the movie and jokes in the movie. All you need to do is focus on your call sheet, the lines you got to learn for that day, and nailing it. Yeah.
That's good advice.
Yeah.
Okay, good, yeah.
I'm glad you don't remember saying it.
I love that.
It's so funny how somebody can have a big impact on you and not remember it at all.
That's so funny.
Because honestly, Molly, it's something I tell myself all the time.
Yeah.
Because I do so much work, and I say whenever I get inundated, I got to do this, I got to do that. I remember Molly's, just focus on the thing you got to do today. That's all you got to worry about.
That's true. That's good advice.
Yeah.
For life, yeah.
Our next question is from Daniel Mason. All right, there you go, Daniel. How you doing? Good. You got any weed?
Oh, my God.
All right. Anyways, Daniel says, I absolutely loved all of your character performances while on SNL and on Will and Grace. Your talent is unforgettable and timeless. What was your most favorite character to play on SNL and why? And what is it like to work on set on Will and Grace?
Oh, great. Well, I guess my favorite character was Mary Katherine Gallagher because it was the closest to me. I kind of wrote like how I felt when I was little, and I just exaggerated it, and I couldn't believe that was like my first big character that I got on, and so that was really thrilling to get that on air.
Right.
And it really taught me to write from myself, because people were like, "Oh my God, my sister's just like that," and I couldn't believe people related to it. And then right when I left the show, I did a character named Jeannie Darcy, who's like a bad stand-up comedian, and so that was really fun too. I like that character too.
Yeah.
What'd you say? Don't get me started. Don't even get me started. It was supposed to be really bad. It was like I was so tired of trying to make people laugh that I wanted to do something really dull, where it didn't matter if you got laughs because she's a bad stand-up and she's not good, and she doesn't care if people laugh. She's not noticing. So
I love that.
It was like
Yes.
a creative exercise in
Don't
like
get me started.
bomb, and like
Yes.
I wanted to bomb. And,
Yeah.
yeah.
I love that character. I
thank you.
actually had forgot about it until I read the book.
Oh my gosh.
And I remembered it. I was like, oh yeah, that was really funny. Yeah.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask you too, but this is a moment that we had at SNL, Molly and I.
Yeah.
I see Molly like on a Thursday morning. I go, oh hey Molly, I was watching a movie last night, late at night. I was gonna jerk off, but I couldn't because you were in it. And Molly was like, shut up. We go into her office, and then she started telling me about this movie that she made when she started acting, and it's like a softcore porn movie.
It's porn. But I didn't really realize that. I was hired like as the best friend.
Yes.
And we shot it at this like pretty house in Hancock Park, and I would just like eat ice cream with the girl. Like, didn't we talk about like boys like eat ice cream? And then after we would finish those scenes, she would go shoot the dirtiest scenes, which I was not a part of. But I like that I'm in such a dirty movie.
It was the funniest thing in the world. I mean, I'm watching a porn at night, and then all of a sudden the girl that I work with is in the movie. I'm like, wait, what the hell? Zipping up, and this is so wrong. Anyways, that's our one private story that we have.
So good.
That we never told people about. Oh my God.
Yeah. Oh my God, that's so funny.
Sorry, I'm crying, laughing,
Oh
thinking
my
about
God.
it. Okay, here's another audience question. This is from Pamela, no last name. Hi, Molly. I'm from Cleve, too. What's the one memory of growing up in northeastern Ohio that you want to forget? You can say Cedar Point if you want to.
Oh wow, one thing that I want to forget.
You've forgotten already.
No. I don't know. Can I go back to that one?
Yeah, we'll go back.
Okay.
We'll pass on that question. Rachel Van Beck?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Yay. That's cute.
She's nice. I have been Mary Katherine Gallagher every Halloween since 2009.
Oh my God. That's so wild.
She says she has a photo to prove it also, but we won't be able to get that up here.
So sweet.
Will you do the superstar move for me?
Sure. You want me to do it? Sure. I can't do it with my microphone though. Okay, good.
Okay.
I could do it every day, 50 times a day. I never get sick of it.
There you go.
It feels so good. It feels good. Thank you. It's so sweet.
So lovely.
I actually did that as a joke. It was a joke to my friend Debbie Palermo, because she used to joke around. She'd be like, when I did my stage show, Deborah Palermo would be like, she was very supportive, and she would see me before the Rob and Molly show, and she'd be like, there she is, superstar. So when I got my first Mary Katherine Gallagher sketch on SNL, it went really well and stuff. And then as a joke in the very end, I had left stage, I slid off a chair, and then I came back on really quickly and just went, superstar, and I walked off. But I did it for my friend Debbie back home in Cleveland to make her laugh.
That's great.
Yeah. So that
very
was just
sweet.
started as a joke to my friend. Isn't that wild? Yeah.
That's really sweet. Okay. Do you want to talk about Cord and Tisch a little?
Sure.
You guys know Cord and Tisch?
Yeah, we had so much fun.
It's one of my favorite things. It's written by a friend of ours, Harper Steele.
Yes.
And it's the funniest thing ever to me. Will plays
Cord Hosenback.
Cord Hosenback.
Yeah.
Who is like a local, I would say, like morning talk show host type. Mm-hmm. Who's specializes in parades and specials like that, but is definitely afraid of horses. Mm-hmm. Even though there's horses at parades all the time. And Tisch is his partner, and tell him about Tisch.
Tisch Cadogan is just a woman who's just has a very positive attitude. She's like, I am my kid's mom, I am my husband's wife. And, she just likes to, she's very feminine and, that kind of, yeah.
But she has a dark side to her, too, doesn't she? Like, she gets people fired a lot or something?
Oh, I don't remember.
Okay.
Does she? Yeah, that's funny.
I thought it was one of the jokes, and then it was like I think it was in the Rose Bowl parade, was that she fired a maid or something, or what? But, then anyways, I played Tim Meadows, who is a former SNL actor who does not like you asking him questions about SNL. And that was all Harper, our friend's idea, because he thought it would be funny to have me get pissed about people asking me questions about SNL. Because I told him once that I got angry at somebody during an interview, because I was like, I haven't been on the show in 20 years. Ask me something else.
Oh, that's so funny.
Okay, thank you. So Cord and Tisch I want to say, first of all, thank you guys for bringing me along to do it and stuff, but we got to go to England.
Yes, for the royal
wedding.
Yes, Meghan Markle and Harry.
And it is another one of those examples, thank God for Will, that you go, people are spending millions of dollars to let three idiots say stuff on the microphone and talk, and it is so much fun to do. It's so much fun to do.
Yeah, so much fun. It's a little crazy though, because sometimes like for England, we flew in and the time is crazy, and then they throw you right in and you're performing live. It's live, and I remember I had barely even slept. That's what's hard sometimes is. As a performer, I'm always worried about, I want to get a good sleep so I can be like a peak performer. But sometimes when you do these, flying in to shoot, you haven't even fallen asleep. And then they're like, and you're on. And you're like, oh,
Yeah.
Do you experience, now, whenever I watch the movies, I'm always thinking when I look at the actors, I wonder if they're tired. I was just in New York, I did Howard Stern on Tuesday, and I was so worried I wasn't going to be able to fall asleep because you flying in from LA, and then the time change, and I just get I just want to be able to go to sleep.
Yeah.
Isn't that interesting?
How was Stern? Was it fun?
Yeah, it was fun. Yeah.
Did he ask you anything that you were uncomfortable asking or answering?
So intimate. This is a real conversation. No.
Okay, it was a good answer.
Good. Yeah, it was good. Yeah,
it's a good answer.
Good. Yeah.
Well, I've been informed by a small clock that our time is up.
Oh my gosh! Oh.
I know. That's what I feel.
I don't mind if anybody has. Is there any? Oh my
Yeah.
God!
I got weed.
I'm trying to think of.
Well, if this was my deal, I would say let's keep going. But I don't own this theater.
Is there, okay.
And I think they might have another thing happening afterwards.
What about one more question? One more, come on.
I'll go.
Yeah. I love the
Go ahead. You with your hands up, ma'am?
So, the question is,
Yeah.
what did you do at the SNL audition that you think clinched the job for you?
What did you do at the SNL audition
that I think clinched the job for you? Oh my gosh, I love it. That's so great. Oh my
Sweet.
God, I love it. So at the SNL audition, we got flown in. I had done my stage show, and it was actually interesting because there was a woman who was kind of calling herself the talent scout in
I know who you're talking about
LA,
too. Yeah.
who was not helpful at all. So understand, I had been I had been asked to audition 5 years before, I made a tape with all my waitressing money and I got passed over. And I was so upset. And I found out on the payphone outside of my apartment in Hollywood on the corner of Fountain and Vine across from the El Pollo Loco that I was not going to be invited in. Yeah. And I cried and cried. And then I was just like, you know what? I'm just going to focus on my stage show. And if they come back again, I'm just going to write characters and develop and do my show and write and develop and create. So if they come back again, I'm going to be locked and loaded and ready. But anyhow, there was this woman who called herself the talent scout, but she wasn't really interested in women. She was kind of only more interested in comedy boys. And I was like, oh, she's missing all the good girls. But then Marcy Klein came and was in charge. And then I heard they were looking again. This is 5 years later. And they said, can we have a tape? And I was like, no, you can't have a tape. You got to come see my show. So she flew out. Good move. She flew out, saw my that 55-minute stage show. It went great, and then she was like, you're coming to New York to audition. So they flew a bunch of girls in, we were all on the same flight, and Marcy had said, call me if you have any questions. And I was like, oh, would it be okay if I bring my partner, Rob? And she was like, sure. And I said, you know, can we bring wigs? She was like, yeah, bring a wig. And
it's just like my audition. Could I bring a wig? Yeah, bring a wig.
Yeah. But then backstage there was like mayhem. Like girls were like, I didn't know you could bring a wig. And I was like, yeah, Marcy said. Or I didn't know you could bring your partner. It was like really, ooh. And so my friend Andrew and my partner Rob just walked me around the block and they were like, it's okay, you know, calm down. Just, you can stay out of all that because they didn't want it to psych me out. Mm-hmm. So then each girl gets 5 minutes, and it was at this place called Stand Up New York. So you have 5 minutes to do 5 characters. And they put you in front of an audience that's expecting to see stand-up. So instead they're getting sketches and characters, and they were not easy to make laugh. So, and by the way, the talent scout who was calling herself the unofficial talent scout or whatever had told me when she got wind that I was getting an audition through Marcy Klein, she was like, oh yeah, I heard you're auditioning. She was like, whatever you do, don't do that, you know, that Catholic schoolgirl character. Lauren will hate it and you'll never get hired. And can you believe that? Isn't that crazy? And so I did not do that character for my audition. But basically, I went out there for my 5 minutes, and I was like, this is the opportunity of a lifetime. And I had my characters, and I remember starting the first character, and I was bombing. And I just like turned around to put on the next character's, you know, glasses, and I gave myself a little pep talk, like, just be a good actress. Don't worry if you don't get laughs. And I saw Chris Farley next to Lauren. And I was like, Chris Farley is here. This is so cool. Yeah, so I just kind of leaned down, put on my glasses, like, get it together, Molly. Get it together. Hold it together. Put on the glasses. And then I came, and it went great. It went great. And yeah, so I didn't hear that I got the show for a couple months. But I was so excited that I even got to that point to even audition for SNL. And then in LA, people kind of hear, so I think people were like, oh, I heard you're gonna get Saturday Night Live. And I was like, no, I didn't know anything. And then I got a call that Lauren wanted to meet me out in LA, and I had a meeting with him, and I just have one more little story that's connected to that. So I had a meeting with him, and it was great, and then I went out to celebrate with my sister. We had a glass of Pinot Noir, and we were celebrating. Then I met Lauren, and then I was walking from her apartment, and I got mugged.
Yes, that's right.
I was like, just when I was like, you know, a drug addict was really nervous, and he's like, this came and like took me and threw me down on the ground and I was like, oh my God, just be like water, this is so scary. But he seemed scared too, and it was definitely frightening. But then I could tell that he was scared, so I just gave him my money, and then my heart was pounding, and then I was like, but nothing could get me down because I just met Lauren. I was so excited that I was like, it's all fine. And then I was like, do you want my coat? And he was like, no, that's okay, you can keep your coat. And I was like, oh, I just had a moment like, he's so sweet. It was like Stockholm Syndrome where you bond with your captor.
Yeah.
And then we got engaged and it was... No, just kidding.
All right, we should say goodnight. We probably should. Thank you guys so much. Let's have another round of applause. Bye.